Just a quick look at the bike setup and where I carried what. So I got most of my stuff from Relevate Designs. As you could see, there's like 4 or 5 pieces that are matching. I found them to work really well. There's lots of others on the market as well. But in general, starting off with the seat bag in the back, this is a Terrapin 14 liter. Clothing, sleeping bag, and on the start of a longer section, some of the heavier food, that I try to put to the front of the bag. Also sandals, lovely for when you get to camp. Do put a carabiner on them, otherwise you will lose them on the trail. I saw quite a few that were lost along the way. This little guy, I put all my tools in and, lube for the chain and everything like that. So that's a little tool bag. I don't dig in there every day. This little mag tank is quite handy because you can put your power bars and things in there. So it's really, right there when you need it. The full suspension bikes have, less space in the frame area. This is custom for this bike. Again, Relevate makes a couple of different ones. I put way at the bottom the rope that I would hang my food bag with. I put my little stove set up in there. And then whatever is heaviest, like nuts or anything, the spare power bank battery, that clunker I dragged along all the time. And then coming to the front, you've got the handlebar bag that takes the tent and the sleeping pad rolled into each other. Mine is, from my hiking days, so it's like a 17-year-old tent. You get smaller ones now, which I'll probably invest in the future. And then this loose flap in the front with a little tie down. That's where I put my rain gear, the jacket, the pants I never really quite wore, and there's a bit of the ground sheet sticking out there, Polycro, love that stuff, it worked really well. And I put on top here sort of loosely, but just with a, tied to the handlebar as well, a little slap bag. That's where I kept the GoPro, and some other little necessities that you may need. On this side, I also love the little bag you can put your electrolytes or scratch or whatever you take in on that side. Also a wired computer, because it doesn't need to be recharged, everything, and it's kind of nice to just know the mileage, and sometimes you have to look up something in the data book or a turn or something like that. And then lastly, well, this was actually didn't work right from day one. I don't know, I charged it at home one last time and then it didn't work, but that would be a GoPro remote that would be handy if it actually works. So yeah, that's a little setup. Everything that doesn't fit in here, mainly water and food, goes into the little backpack that I carried on my back. And I try to minimize the weight on the backpack and squeeze as much as I can in here. Even in that bedroll in the front, sometimes I would put power bars or Cliff bars on either side of it, and it's so much easier when the weight's on the bike itself. So cool, that's the bike setup as it is in the field on the last day. So before I pack everything away, I actually just wanted to take a few minutes to show the gear that I was using. As a beginner bike packer, it may not be perfect, but maybe it's helpful for someone who's trying it out for the first time. You always learn lessons on the trail, so take it for what it is. So starting with clothing, it's very, very important to keep weight down. Like with anything bike packing, when you're pushing the bike uphill, when you're doing longer distances, keeping weight down is a big thing. So fairly basic on clothing. I rode every single day in a 150 spec wool t-shirt. They actually work really well, they're light, they get dry pretty quickly, and they tend to smell less than cycling jerseys and other things. I did take a backup shirt just in case the other one was wet or so that I can swap it out and wash the one while wearing the other one. Ended up not wearing the backup much, but definitely would take it along. For cycling shorts, I actually just took one pair of mountain bike shorts and then 2 pairs of road cycling shorts to wear underneath. And what's nice about this is that you can actually, if you have water along the trail, wash out the dirty ones and just put it on your backpack or on the back of your bike and fairly easily dry that during the day. So socks and pants you like to have dry. So I really used 2 of these and 1 pair of bike shorts, and that was all I had for that. So that's cycling clothing shorts. Then I had a layer of insulation. This is a thin wind stopper shell from Mountain Hardware. I find it handy because it breathes really well, better than the Gore-Tex. And I could wear it in the evenings around camp. I slept most nights in this. If it got colder, I also, put my NanoPuff on top of that. So layers of insulation. I like the windstopper, we'll take that again. And of course, you have to have the puffy jacket to keep you warm. When it rains, I use the Marmot Gore-Tex jacket. Actually use this quite a bit. You always end up getting wet even underneath because you're sweating uphill and things like that. But it works okay. I'm a little bit undecided about the rain pants. I wore them literally for 10 minutes. It got too hot. They're cumbersome to ride in. Probably won't take them next time. I did take a pair of, slightly insulated sort of Lycra cycling long pants, and I never wore this. So this is something I would probably not take again. But I'd look for something that combined the functionality of these two. They can ride on a colder day and it can give you some water protection. So that's in my future, figuring out a little bit more on the rain side. And then getting to camp, I had my sleeping clothes, wool long johns that you can easily wear for 2 weeks. That's perfect, they don't tend to smell. Long sleeve wool shirt. Pair of clean, I like to have a pair of clean socks to sleep in, or if you end up needing an extra pair to supplement your riding socks. So this always kept clean and dry and only wore them for sleeping. So pair of socks and of course a beanie to keep the head warm. That works pretty well. Now to supplement the riding side, of course, you have cycling gloves. That's sort of a standard, whether it's fingerless or full finger. I took full finger gloves, never used them. So I used the regular cycling gloves. I like these Gore wooden gloves that you can actually use your iPhone with as well. So once or twice when it got cold or when I got trapped up in the hailstorm, I put these on with some very lightweight, thin Gore-Tex layers. And that actually worked pretty well to keep the hands warm, and you just feel better overall when that happens. The full finger gloves, as I say, not quite sure if I will take them again. 2 pairs of riding socks, very important to have at least 2 pairs, so you can always try to keep one dry. Because once your feet get wet, everything is wet. You do want to kind of try to keep your feet as dry as possible so you don't get like soft skin and all kinds of complications. I love this pair of Sealskin's Gore-Tex waterproof socks, and actually found if you arrive in camp totally soaked and the next morning your shoes are still wet, often a couple of days I just rode in these because your feet are dry and you can use them. So they work pretty well as well. And I love these sunscreen armbands. They're SPF 50, they weigh absolutely nothing and saves you on carrying extra sunscreen around. And if you're going to spend that many hours at altitude in the sun, it's actually good to have a bit of covering because your arms face the sun more directly. It does help as well. So that was basically all the clothing that I took. And it was more than enough. As I said, the one set of pants I didn't use at all. It was nice to take a little cloth, like a little baby 1 ounce, washcloth from, I think it's from REI. Just nice to be able to clean off with a little bit of biodegradable soap. Also good for washing clothing as it is. Moving on, sleeping bag, just standard, you know, sort of compressed down sleeping bag. I used an old tent. It's an old PCT one, I think, from Mountain Hardware that's like 17 or 18 years old, because I didn't want to invest in a new tent. Probably the first thing I'll do before the next trip is invest in a lighter weight tent. This one was pretty good, and it fitted, you know, sort of in a roll with my sleeping pad. But it's probably the easiest place to save weight on a tent and sleeping pad combination. Although they are pricey, they are worth it. And, you know, good gear lasts a long time. I've had this tent for almost 20 years and probably camped hundreds of days in it. So good gear lasts, and that's where I would make an investment. One thing I learned there is something I've never knew about before this trip, is something called polycro. It's about, I don't know, 10, 12 bucks for two of these. So one of them's like $6 or $7. This is a specialist plastic they use in, I think, window coverings or something like that. But anyway, using it as a ground sheet, it's just incredibly strong, dries easily, weighs absolutely nothing, and keeps you dry. I mean, wonderful stuff. I'll never camp without this again. And the bonus is, if it's raining high up on a pass or something, you pull this out and put it over your Gore-Tex when you're waiting out a storm, and you actually keep much drier than just with the Gore-Tex itself, and then fold it up again and, you know, open it up later to dry somewhere during the day. Another thing I learned, someone on YouTube turned me on to this, is a little small blow-up pillow. This one is made by Snow Summit. It blows up to a little air-filled pillow like that, and it just adds a lot of joy to your life, and you're not stuffing clothing, especially if you're wearing most of your clothing, and just being comfortable, having a comfortable pillow. This weighs nothing. I would definitely go with this again. And then sort of like the hardware stuff, I did take a rope to be able to hang your food bag at night, because there are bears out here in the backcountry. Probably could take a thinner one. This is the one I had, so that's the one that went. I tend to stuck all my food in a nice food bag, dry bag from the lightweight ones from Sea to Summit. And this is what I would haul up into the tree. It's kind of nice, keeps your food in one place. All I would say is anything with a powder, electrolyte, scratch, keto mix, anything like that, put it in a plastic bag and in another plastic bag and even a third one, because it will explode all over your stuff and then make everything sticky if it gets wet, so, which happened somewhere along the way. But just I would double and triple bag that. But this worked well, putting it up into the tree. The first few days I had were really rainy, so actually along the way I bought some extra dry bags. It's nice to keep your windproof layer or one or two of your other layers just 100% sure that it's going to be dry. Most of my clothing and stuff went into the dry bags in the front and back of the bike, so I knew that was going to be dry. But just for the ones on my backpack, where the shield you put, the sort of cover you put on the back of the backpack, doesn't always work, because the rain comes behind your neck and then kind of wets the backpack from the inside or from the back side. And dry bags to keep your essentials dry works very, very well. Little simple cooking stove setup. It is earlier in the video. I do a little bit of that and talk about the food and stuff, so you can kind of backtrack. I'll put a note in the description of, you know, where that is. Sunscreen. Love this stuff, Body Glide or something similar, the Food Glide. Every single morning, the first thing I did was rub this on every toe, inside, outside, top, bottom, so that you don't develop hot spots during the day, because it's long days in the saddle, much longer than your sort of weekend or after work rides. And this stuff is magic. I mean, I've done long distance hikes with it, and you just don't have problems with this. Not a single blister, not a single use of moleskin or anything like that, if you're using the right stuff. Took a little bit of hydrogen peroxide. It's almost the only medical thing I took of that, and a few band-aids. Got a little cut on the side of my head, one of these sides. And, you know, it's nice to dab your little scratches you're inevitably going to pick up on the trail. Water, you know, you have to purify water along the way. So I started out with this little Sawyer mini filter, which I consider to be less than desirable. Comes with a little roll-up bag. What they don't tell you is that the bag is a piece of crap that doesn't work, and mine broke on the first day and properly broke on about the third day. And most people get around that by getting a smart water bottle which fits on the filter, and then you can sort of get along with it a little bit better. So a lot of people use this on the trail. Not my favorite, but it's a good backup, and you know, if you have time to sit around all day pressing water, that can probably work for you. My favorite thing is Aquamira, which is a 2-part solution, chlorine dioxide. You mix the two together, wait 5 minutes, dunk it in the water, and 15 minutes later it's safe to drink. I've used this before on the John Muir Trail and other long distance things. It works, it doesn't taste like anything, it's reliable, definitely my go-to. Because you can also, when you arrive in camp or something, you fill up your 3-liter Camelback and put the drops in, and before you pitch your tent you can actually drink it, where with a squeezy Sawyer it would take you an hour to kind of, you know, go through all of that if the thing is not cooperating. Deodorant, nice, you know. Typical things, flashlight, knife, obviously you need. I took a little spare thing that of things I could think of. Never got to use it, but that's obviously, you know, fortunate that you don't have to use it. But like things like spare laces, a spare lighter, spare memory card, a couple of clothespins that you can, you know, fix things with. And I took a needle with some fishing gut just in case you had to sew up some gear or anything like that. And some extra screws for my SPD pedals, because if those come loose and break out in the middle of nowhere, you're stuck. Yeah, there's no bike store out there. Little cooking setup I mentioned. Electronics, I did everything on my iPhone. I mean, the great app to track everything. You can literally, if you're two people with iPhones, you can even ditch the trail book and just both take pictures of all the pages, because that's what I did in the morning anyway, so I didn't have to dig the book out all the time. And this thing is a bit of a clunker, so you almost save £1/2 pound by just ditching the book. I would completely ditch the maps. I didn't even take them along, and never needed them, never used them. Trail is so well marked, and thank you for everyone with the Colorado Trail Foundation for all the good work with that. But yeah, you don't need anything but the data book, and you can put that on your phone if you need to, and then use the app. Very easy. Spare battery block, obviously, depending on how much time you spend in town, you may want to, you know, charge up the phone. What I did find handy is one of these USB chargers, but with 3 outlets. So if you have an hour or two at a restaurant having a pizza on Leadville or something, you can stick your phone on charge, your backup battery, and maybe your GoPro batteries. So it just makes life a little bit easier trying to, you know, ramp up charging as quickly as you can. So these things are cheap and easy and work really well. Yeah, I mean, basic tools. I mean, I took a spare tube, some lube, you know, a multi-tool, of course, a little piece of extra slime or stands or something to put in your tire. Thankfully, I never had tire issues. Little cloth to handle the chain with, and that just sat in my little tool bag on the bike. A little slap bag I strapped to the handlebar. That actually worked well. I put my GoPro and stuff in here, so it was easily accessible and then could close, and I put a little thing on top of it. I had a helmet mount for the GoPro, and then just this little clip that I was sort of clip on the chest harness. Well, my footage is not very professional, but yeah, It's good for me. It's all I needed. Yeah, and then lastly, somewhere in the video I mentioned the keto mix that's high in fat and energy per ounce that I used and put in my morning coffee, and it happens to be just this one that we randomly use, and this was amazing. On the trail it worked really well. And yeah, everything on the bike, the little previous video will show that, and then my little backpack had a sort of a 3-liter Camelback in it. And this is expandable, so if you need to stick wet or loose clothing in there. And the first days of sort of a 4 or 5 day section, you may have a lot more clothing, or not clothing, food. So just to be able to accommodate that extra food, it's nice to have a bag that can expand a little bit. And then, sticking food in everywhere to see how it makes, how to make it work. Anyway, that's my little amateur overview of what I used. Last thing, the Garmin, never used it. Things about battery hog, so obviously a lot of people use GPS enabled things now, and it actually works fine. This trail is not that remote that you have to go spend the money on an emergency GPS. Within a day, someone will find you a hiker or another biker or something like that, typically if you're close enough to the trail. So that's a quick overview. I'm not sponsored by anyone, so this just happens to be the gear that I had or, decided to acquire. Get out there. I mean, this is actually intimidating and scary to think about, but it's also not that hard to do. Everyone, if you have the time and the ability, should try and should go out there. It's a wonderful, epic adventure. Few things of that scale is available so close to home and so uncomplicated to do. You don't need special permits or anything like that. You just basically show up and do it, and you will remember it for the rest of your life. If you have questions, feel free to send them to me. I'm happy to answer where I can. And go out there, enjoy, have a good adventure, and thank you for watching. Ciao. Yay! And we're off. Bike's ready, everything's going. So it's the start of the Colorado Trail. Feel like a new person. Had a nice cold bath in the river. Would have made Wim Hof proud. But it's important to keep clean and take a bath when you can. It's a nice evening, it's not raining, it's about 60 odd degrees and just pleasant by the river. It's kind of nice to have a nice calm, into the day. And yeah, I mean, day 6 done, and you still get a little bit bruised on the behind. And 2 things that I highly recommend is something called butt paste. Don't tell me where it comes from. I mean, people with babies may know it, and there's a baby on it, so I assume it's used for that. But that in the evening after you washed, and just to kind of soothe the old tired sit bones. And then there's everyone knows chamois butter, which works really, really well, putting it on in the morning. But yeah, you gotta take care of the behind since it's gotta go a long way. But for now, stocked up on food in Buena Vista, so going to make some or have some whole wheat flour tortillas with ham and cheese, something different. Looking forward to tomorrow. It's going to be a big day all the way to Monarch. Voila! Food from heaven, just from a tall tree. Some people like to just camp cold and not have any warm food. I do like the little bit of coffee in the morning though, and it is nice on a longer trek if you need to use a freeze-dried meal to obviously be able to boil water. And instead of a jet boil, which is actually a fairly heavy and bulky and doesn't really fit anywhere on the bike frame, I just use this little, I think it's a 600 ml titanium cup, and the little propane or butane or whatever it is fuel source fits in it, and then you've got a very small little collapsible burner, and that's sort of a very minimalist setup that's lightweight and easy. It's not the most fuel efficient, like the jet boiler is better insulated. I bring a bit of foil in case it's windy to try and sort of protect it from the wind, because that helps with the insulation. But otherwise, this little setup works very well, and this is day 7 on that little canister, and used it most days, and at least 4 or 5 of the evenings as well. Yeah, I thought I'll take a little food shot for the day before I go through all my rations, and I can't show you that. So starting in the morning, it's coffee, little Starbucks instant coffee, and I mix in some chocolate, keto, hot chocolate mix kind of thing that's really delicious with the coffee. And then next to it there, we've got some granola. And moving on to lunch, I've got some nuts, mixed salted nuts, macadamia nuts. They actually pack the most energy per ounce, and next time I'll probably just bring macadamia nuts. I also love these bananas, high fat content, so relatively lightweight for the energy that they carry. My old standby for hiking trips or getting into the backcountry, peanut butter pretzels. Nothing like a good peanut butter pretzel lunch. During the day, I've got some Justins. They're a bitch to get out of the packet, but they're okay. Some honey and goo for those little humps where you just need that little extra kick. Cliff bars that I always agree with pretty well. And I'll use a bit of that scratch electrolyte mix. Actually mix it in with a different electrolyte mix, so there's extra electrolytes. And dinners, I'm going light on this part of the trip because of the water weight and stuff I have to carry. I have one of those sticks of salami and a little packet of crackers, and sometimes I have some leftover nuts or something like that. So that's it for today, and hopefully it'll get me all the way. Good old Snickers bar. Find them anywhere in the world. I've even found them, high up in the Himalayas. Little gas station, everything, they always have a Snickers bar. I kind of prefer Cliff bars. I'm more partial to them, and Justin's almond butter packs way more calories, about twice as much as the Snickers or the Cliff bar, or a goo packet or something like that. But it's kind of hard to get them out of the packets. I'll show you that later. For the moment, I'm going to enjoy my Snickers until I can get up this hill. Another trail tip is to carry a little bit of deodorant. I mean, it weighs less than an ounce, and it goes a long way towards keeping your sanity. And for the occasional person that you run into, they don't really have to stay upwind from you. You see a lot of things about people saying wool is definitely the way to go, the best fabric. People say you can go for weeks without it smelling. I kind of disagree with that. This guy definitely needs a wash since it's been a few days. Got some sweat stains on it and the likes, but wool is definitely the way to go. Also, it's nice and light and works pretty easily. So, see you on the trail. Gotta love Justin's nut butters for the trip. This one is chocolate, hazelnut, and almond butter, and it's super delicious, but the packaging is not really working well. It says knead and squeeze, so you kind of knead it up, you squeeze it out. Very calorie dense, so it's great to take on a hiking trail, but it just doesn't come out of the packet, as well as you should. So you need a knife, and you need to cut the whole package open, and there's still half your delicious almond, hazelnut butter, chocolate left, and you end up having to get it out little bit by little bit. Maybe they can work on their packaging a little bit. Maybe something like a toothpaste roll or something that you can actually squeeze out. Because this gets a little cumbersome every time, looking for the knife and trying to squeeze out the last bit of nuts. I mean, you carried all this energy over the hill, you may as well use it. Delicious though, absolutely delicious. One key aspect of doing something as long as the Colorado Trail is conserving energy. These are long days in the saddle, and quite often in the mornings when your legs are a little bit rested, it's tempting to just crank up these little small inclines or steep little sections that you can easily do on your afternoon or weekend ride. But in the context of a longer ride, it's better to, go a little bit slower, lower your max heart rate or max effort that you put in, get off there. I mean, there ain't no shame in hike a bike on this trail. And most of the time you're on your own, so no one will see you doing it anyway. So things that you would crank up with your buddies on the weekends, you may end up walking. And the same for down, like, real sketchy sections that you may bomb down on the weekend. You don't want to break your bike or yourself out in the middle of nowhere in the wilderness with a long way to, kind of get out of there or hike out of there. And every time you put in that little extra effort or, rev it up to 100% in the morning, you pay for it in the afternoon. So you kind of think in the context of the whole day, keep fueling yourself, keep eating even if you're not hungry. And that way, you can end up, doing 10, 12-hour days when it's needed and not feel completely out of it. Important to take electrolytes as well, both in the morning and evenings. I think that helps a lot, to avoid cramping, to avoid any kind of, fatigue. Yeah, well, you can't avoid fatigue on this trail, but, at least you can avoid, that hamstring or calf cramp in the middle of the night. And the electrolytes work well for that. Conserving energy.